of anybody that made it through the gates into Auschwitz. My father-in-law was there for over 2 years, for 26 months. From November 42, and walked out 9 days before the Russians came in January, third week of January, 1945. And I spent 10 years of my life writing his story about his survival in Auschwitz. So even though I never served in the Army, from my discussions, my writings, and my all the investigation I did because of the writings, even though I was never in uniform, I knew as well or better than anyone who never served the horrors and the dangers of war. And even though I was very, very proud of my son, I did not want him to go. I did not want him to experience that. And the hardest thing I ever had to say to him was, he was right on the cusp of making that decision. And we were in the car together one day, and he said to me, Dad, he says, you don't want me to go, do you? And I took a deep breath, and it was the hardest thing I ever had to say. And I said to him, no, I don't. But I lived my life. I've made my decisions. And if this is something you feel you want to do and need to do, you'll have my total and my complete support. And from that day on, he did.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. A great question that one of our students put forward was, what did you learn about Michael that you didn't know from his friends that he made in Israel, soldiers and the like? Did you find out about something about your child that you didn't know beforehand?
It's a great question.
That is a great question. Quite a bit about Michael. He was a totally different person there. Michael grew, Michael blossomed in Israel. I think Mark has his favorite story about that because it was told to him. Go ahead.
We have an unveiling in this country for a deceased person, I guess a year after their passing. In Israel, Shilashim is 30 days after the burial. So 30 days after Michael's funeral, we went back to Israel, where they unveiled his headstone. And after the ceremony, someone who had worked with lone soldiers before came up to me. We knew him. His name was Tziki Ode. He's in the documentary, the big guy. Tziki came up to me and said, there's a story that you don't know about your son that I'd like to tell you. I said, okay. He says, when word came down that Michael was killed in Lebanon, he says, my phone started to ring. My generation would say, off the hook. There's no more hooks today. He said, that didn't surprise me because, you know, I was a social worker. I knew a lot of people, and Michael knew even more people than I did, had even more friends than I did. He says, so that didn't surprise me. He says, what did surprise me were the several calls I was getting from the very, very poor and some of the homeless Jewish people, some of the street people in the old city of Jerusalem. I said, I don't understand. He said, well, I didn't understand either. So I said to them, how do you know Michael? Where do you come from Michael? And they told me that, well, don't you know? He says, when Michael was on leave, whenever he had a spare moment, he would come looking for us. He would seek us out. He would sit with us, sometimes for hours. He would encourage us and say, don't give up hope. Hashem is still with you. There are people around to help you. I'm here to help you. Whatever I can do for you. Michael would, whatever money he had, which wasn't very much, he would give them. And all those people started to call.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So a couple of other things that students want to ask. And again, there's many more questions than I can ask you, and they're all good. There's a tough one. Did Michael ever look back and question his decision?
No, not at all.
Not for a minute.
Not for a second. And I know that given the choice, he'd do it all over again.
Yeah, that came through pretty much in the movie as well. Another question that's similar is, I know they're not on the phone here, but how did his sisters feel about his decision to serve? Were they supportive? I mean, obviously you talked about being, having both sides to it. Where did they come down on it?
His older sister really supported him and pretty much whatever he wanted. They were very close. Michael has a twin sister, and they were not that close. They used to fight a lot, but yet she was the one who did not want him to go.
Wow. This is a tough one, but this is from the students, so I'm going to
It's okay.
ask, what emotions other than pride were you feeling when Michael was lost? Did you ever express any kind of anger and any other emotions, and how did you deal with those emotions, if you don't mind?
That's a good question. And a quick answer does not come to mind. How about you, honey?
I don't think I was ever angry.
We knew the dangers, and so did Michael. Actually, a year before Michael's passing, he was home, once again home on leave, because most lone soldiers get 30 days off a year and encouraged to go home and visit their families if they can. And Michael and I had some conversations, and he told me about some very, very dangerous missions he was on in Judea and Samaria, in Shechem and Jenin. And I said to Michael, I don't know if this is relevant at all, but it just came to mind.
It's all relevant.
I said to Michael, no father should ever have this conversation with his son, but God forbid the worst happens and you should fall in battle. So your mother and I are going to have to make a decision on what to do. He says, if I should be killed in battle, he says, it's up to you, Mom, what to do. But if you're asking me what I would like, he says, if God forbid that happens, he says, I want to be buried in the military cemetery in Jerusalem. So when we got the word, our very, very first thought after dealing with the shock was, where are we going to bury Michael? And it took us about 30 seconds to make up our minds.
I wanted to say something at this point. I don't know if you knew this, but we have a yearly program where about 50 to 60 of our upperclassmen visit Israel on winter break. And they go as part of something what we call Chesed mission, where it's not about touring, it's really about doing acts of kindnesses, and they visit nursing homes and special children's needs and orphanages and the like. And an annual stop, and it's one of the most memorable and important parts, is to visit Michael Levin. I know it was at the same time an obvious choice and a difficult choice. And, we want you to know how much, just from getting us, we're just the Yeshiva of Flatbush, we're just one school, but how much Michael being there means because of that. I know he's your son, but one of the things that came out in the movie is he's everybody's son and everybody's brother. And the idea that he was a lone soldier it's a funny term, because if anything, he was anything but alone. He was with everyone, and everyone just had a beautiful capacity to connect with so many people. I was wondering if you could talk about the Lone Soldier Foundation and organization a little bit, about how you got involved and what it does, what you do, anything about that. That would be a question.
So while Michael was in the service, we would talk to him every Friday. For us, it was early in the morning. For him, it was a couple hours before Shabbos. And Michael went to Israel not knowing Hebrew. He took Olpan there. But he would call us, and every week it was a different problem. I don't understand these papers I have to fill out. My Hebrew's not good enough. I can't answer them. The bank is closed already. I don't know where to do this. I need help with that. I have to send a fax. It's closed on, it's already, everything closes at 2 o'clock before Shabbos. And he said, I really need help. So he went to that man that was in the documentary, Tiki, and he said, Tiki, when I'm done the service, we're going to start a Lone Soldier Center. And Tiki said, okay, Michael, what are you talking about? And Michael kind of connected all the dots and put it out together. And
Michael was not only a dreamer, he was a visionary. There were several people running around Israel doing what they could, like Tziki, to help lone soldiers, but there was no national organization that existed. And Michael saw the need for one. He figured, if I'm having these types of problems and facing these types of challenges, my guess is that all lone soldiers are. And there was close to 7,000 of them in the IDF. So long story short, Tziki, along with a couple other former lone soldiers with our help, got together about a year after Michael's passing and started the Lone Soldier Center. And we'll fast forward now about 12 years later since its inception, and the organization has grown. In fact, there's other organizations now that have spun off from that we support. We started a 501c3 charitable organization in this country called the Michael Levin Lone Soldier Foundation. And Harriet and I speak to groups. The DVD that you saw has gone out to thousands and thousands of different organizations, and we receive money from the people that show the documentary, and we support the organizations in Israel because there are dozens and dozens of employees and a lot of overhead to take care of. We have a budget of well north of $1 million to support all these different organizations, and most of that money has to be raised here in this country. But there's pre-army programs at the center. There's housing. We house about 140 some lone soldiers in a half a dozen different housing units. There's counseling and guidance that is constantly going on. There's all kinds of social events. There's Shabbat meals. There's Thanksgiving. There's all kinds of things. There's visiting soldiers in the field. Besides Shabbat meals, there's a food truck that goes around down to Gaza or up north. And we're doing everything we can before, during, and after a lone soldier's service in the IDF to make their lives a little bit easier.
so now with the virus, they can't offer Shabbat meals. So what they do is if the soldier signs up, they have Shabbat meals prepackaged, waiting for them, and they just have to pick them up Friday morning.
Wow.
But the big thing that changed is we had a couple of very prominent rabbis, one very dear close friend of ours, that after Michael's passing came to us and said that we are embarrassed to tell you that prior to Michael's passing, that we have never, ever heard of the term lone soldier or Chayal Boded in this country. It was something that was just under the radar. They knew people went over there, but that was about it. There's been a complete sea change in that today. Today, a lone soldier in the Jewish community, in the connected Jewish community in America, it's a common phrase. Most people know what it means. And in Israel, as a lone soldier, you can't walk down the street or you knock on someone's door and say, I'm a lone soldier, and you've got a place to stay or a meal to eat. There's been a complete reversal. And it was because of Michael. Michael was the change. For some reason, his story, his sacrifice, just captured the hearts and minds of people. And of course, the video, my God, we've got thousands and thousands of copies of video out. I would say the vast majority of the Jews living in Israel, which is now 6.8 million, have probably seen it because they show it. They've showed it many, many times on national television on Yom Hazikaron. So if Michael could come back now, he would see how the lives of lone soldiers in Israel have been improved substantially. You know, we talked to Michael Oren, and Michael was telling us so many times stories of when he was a lone soldier 25, 30 years ago, how it was completely different. And things are a lot better today in Israel. And it's because of Michael.
They're better for the parents also. They also have liaisons that the parents can contact when they haven't heard from their child in several days and they're starting to worry, or their child is ill or hurt. So even that has changed.
Amazing. So I have two questions, and take them in whatever order you like. I think you've kind of answered one, and the video kind of answers one, but I'd like to hear it anyway. What would you like Michael's legacy to be? And the other question is, what would you tell a parent whose child is asking them to go to serve in the Army today and to be a lone soldier? What would you tell them? I'm sure you've had that conversation with someone. So I'm curious. You know, those are questions that the students asked, and I'm just, you know, getting to the end here. We have till 2:30.
Take the second one first, if that's okay.
Sure.
When I speak and parents come up to me and ask that, I'm a firm believer in following what your heart tells you to do. I don't think that just working to make money is the answer. And I don't think you can raise your child to be Jewish and say, okay, but not that Jewish. Let everybody else go. There's in Israel, had that existed, my family wouldn't have been killed in Auschwitz, maybe.
There is one thing that we will not do, and we've been asked several times by 17, 18-year-old kids that want to join the IDF, that were inspired by Michael's story, that have seen the video and want to make Aliyah and serve the country in uniform. And they say to us, I wonder if you could do me a favor, they say. I said, what is it? I said, would you please talk to my parents for me? Because they're giving me a hard time and they won't let me go. I need your help. And our response to them is always the same. First of all, we're very, very proud of your decision. You're a real passionate Zionist, but this is something that you need to discuss and work out with your family. We cannot get involved in a family matter like this. That's where we draw the line. We don't want to be responsible.
And then to the legacy question, and then we'll pray mincha and you know, say a hashkava for Michael, just something in his memory.
Legacy question. Well, Michael was very comfortable in his own skin. He knew who he was. He knew the history of the family. He knew that the recreation of Israel for the first time in 2,000 years was just a miracle, the rebirth of Israel. He also knew that the final chapter in world Jewry was not going to be played out in the United States. It was going to be played out in Israel. And Michael wanted to be a part of it all. And if he would come back, I'm sure he would say that he wouldn't change his mind at all. He wouldn't do anything different than what he did. And he would want everyone to be as proud of their religion, as proud of Israel as he was, and to do everything they could to help support our religion, our people, and our country. And that doesn't necessarily mean picking up a gun. There are a lot of ways to do it. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It definitely answers the question. Look, I want to again say thank you for taking up your time. I know you're busy. I know today is not an easy day, but not only your time of sharing of your experience, your emotions, I know there's more pride than pain, but there's pain, and to be able to open yourselves up to that for us. And thank you so much for sharing Michael with the rest of the world. He really. He is a living legacy, and you could know that. And I could tell you that the 400 or 500 people that were on this call in the middle of an afternoon and who watched the movie today were all deeply, deeply moved by your son, deeply inspired by the choices that he made, the actions that he took, the values that he held. These were all very, very impactful for us. And he, even though he was a young man, I think every single one of us would say he was a teacher. He was our teacher, and we feel blessed to be his students in that sense, and to have learned the lesson of what it means to live your life for Kiddush Hashem, and to be the best kind of Jew possible. So thank you for sharing of your time, and thank you for sharing of him with us.
Thank you, Rabbi, for teaching about him.
It's a pleasure being with you today.
Give me one moment. I'd just like to, sorry, I have to open a book, but I'd like to say the Hashkava, the memorial prayer for him. His Hebrew name was Melech, because you said the Melech Ben
Meir HaKohen.
Okay, so I'm gonna just say a brief Hashkava for him, and then we're gonna pray Mincha. If you're welcome to join us. Or not, but thank you so much for giving up your time. And I'll take about 8 to 10 minutes. But first, the Hashkava. Tov Shem Mishemen Tov B'Yom HaMavet Miyom Hivaldo Sof Davar Hakol Nishma Et Ha'elim Yira Ve'et Mitzvotav Shemor Ki Zeh Kol Ha'adam Yalzu Chasidim V'Chavod Yeranenu Al Mishkevotam Menucha Nechona B'Sheva Elyona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina במעלת קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מאירים ומזהירים, וחילוץ עצמים וכפרת אשמים, והרחקת פשע והקרבת ישע, וחמלה וחנינה מלפני שוכן מעונה, וחולקת טובה לחיי העולם הבא, שם תהא מנת ומחיצת ושיבת נפש, השם הטוב, מלך בן מאיר לוין הכהן. רוח אדוני תניחנו בגן עדן, תתפטר מן עלמא הדן, בקיצור ימים ושנים, כראות אלוהה מראה שמיה ורעה, המלך ברחמיו יחוס ויחמול עליו, וילווה אליו השלום, ועל משכבו יהיה שלום, כדכתיב יבוא שלום, ינוח על משכבותם, הולך נכוחו, הוא וכל בני ישראל, השוכבים עמו בכלל הרחמים והסליחות, וכן יהי רצון ונאמר אמן.
Amen. Thank you. Rabbi, we're going to jump off now. We have to prepare for the next meeting in a few minutes. But I want to thank you again for giving us the opportunity to talk to your students and teachers about our son, Michael.
Thank you so much. It was so meaningful for you to join us.
Thank you.
Be well.